I mean, this is a play that um, it takes place in multiple locations around the globe, not just in our hemisphere. We're in various time periods, and there's a sort of fascinating structure to the play and a very complex story across generations. So I was wondering if, given all of that, if you could give us a little overview of how the play works, how Melinda has chosen to put it together, what the general story is that she's dealing with, and maybe in all of that, what you're finding now as an artist the most compelling as you're tackling the play. That's about 5 questions all at once, but
it's better than What Did You Play in All My Children, I think. Thank you very much. It's a wonderful play, and it covers a lot of territory and about a lot of different things, a lot of really interesting things. The play takes place just after the play begins just after 9/11. It's something that most of us can relate to, and the characters in the play relate to it very strongly. And the woman of the house, who is Cuban American, is having a hard time dealing with, as many of us did, dealing with the idea of getting on an airplane, amongst other things, after 9/11. Sonia Flew, that's where it's all about. She is struggling with that and is having anxiety attacks and dealing with that problem. Her husband, happily in this case, is a psychiatrist, is Jewish American. So we have a multi-race family here, and they have 2 children. The oldest, Zach, has just announced that because of 9/11, he has decided to join the Marines and go abroad. And she reacts very badly. The family, obviously, this is a stressful situation for the whole family, but she reacts very badly to it, and strangely. Unlike her. This is a very brave and intelligent, interesting woman. She's a lawyer. She works for a public defender's office. This is somebody that goes out and fights the good fight. So it's very strange for her to have such a sort of tentative reaction to his going, and ultimately a rather violent reaction to the idea that he is joining the armed forces. That develops into a kind of crisis in the family through a series of arguments and through a series of, as you talk about, a kind of soliloquies, for lack of a better word. The playwright has chosen to occasionally have that leading actress, Sonia, speak directly to the audience. And she tells us what's going on, sometimes with great confusion, about what's going on in her mind. And she's trying to put together all the ideas from her past that may lead to this particular kind of breakdown that she's having at this time. Through all of that, as the fights get sort of more bitter by the end of the first act, she makes a resolution to indeed share with the rest of the family, and indeed share with us, exactly what did happen. And so the whole second act takes place in the 60s, about 1960-61, in Cuba, at the height of Castro's revolution. And it switches. All the characters in the first act, all the actors in the first act play different characters in the second act, and they play her family in flashback from about 40 years earlier than that. And then we find out through that flashback what happened that made her so bitter about her family, about Cuba, about politics, about governments, about war, about religion. She has a lot of difficulties with all of those issues, and we find out why in the second act. I'm not going to go into too much detail because I'd love you to be surprised as I was. The second part of that question is a really good one. What's great about this play, I think, and I've directed a lot of plays and been involved in a lot of plays in my lifetime, is that the story is new. It's new to me. It's not new to you, and it's not new to several members of our cast. Not all of them are Cuban, but nevertheless, I think for most audiences, and probably most of this audience, this will be a new story. I understand the Cuban Revolution because in junior high school I got under my desk and was told that they were going to, that atom bombs were going to come flying our way from Cuba. I was in Seattle. I was a long way from danger, but nevertheless, maybe from Toronto. I didn't know. It was something else. But nevertheless, I knew it from that. I understood Bay of Pigs and sort of what that was all about. And as like most Americans, we have a fairly negative sense of what that government, with the communist government, was all about. But I didn't know this story. And I didn't know that there was a story in Cuba very like the stories that happened around the Iron Curtain, around Berlin, about people trying to get their relatives and children across the wall. The same thing happened in Nazi Germany with people trying to get not only Jewish children but all kinds of children out of harm's way in the middle of that war. And the same thing was happening. It's interesting if you look at that in each successive decade. The same thing was happening in Cuba in a way that I really had no understanding of. And the play centers on that idea, the whole notion of Pedro Pan, which I don't know as much about as I should. I know enough to direct the play, but we have experts here that know a great deal more about it. But that whole process was trying to get Cuban children into the United States away from the communist revolution, which everyone thought was only going to last a couple of years. And instead it lasted a long time. It's a great play. It's a really terrific play. It sounds very serious. It is a serious play. It's also very funny. And it's at the very core, it's a family story. It's a family story that I relate to. I think most of you will too.